juxtaposition between one of the true icons of Dutch art, not just at the Met, but all over the world, and a picture that's actually been in storage for a number of years, gets at the heart of what I wanted to accomplish with this show, which was a new conversation between pieces in our permanent collection of 17th century Dutch art. There are no loans in this show. My brief really was to think with what we already have in our collection. But as Max mentioned, Dutch art has been a strength of the Met since its founding, since the first purchase of a large group of paintings in 1871. And it really was an incredible privilege for me as a relatively young curator to get to tell a new story with this very venerable and fabled collection. You'll notice, if you look at the labels, that I refer to aspects of the story of the 17th century in the Dutch Republic that we can't tell with our collection. There are certainly blind spots, more of the darker chapters of Dutch history that aren't represented in the paintings that we bought. And so I think this is also an opportunity for us to take stock and think about what Dutch paintings we might want to add over the next 150 years, if we are able to add any. This very Baroque display takes place in a recognizably domestic interior. We have this theatrical gesture of the curtain pulled aside to reveal what may almost be a reference to these hidden churches, to this clandestine celebration of the Catholic Mass. And you do see a table that is set for the Mass with a missal, with a chalice, and a crucifix. And then behind it, Vermeer has represented crucifixion by the Flemish artist Jacob Jordans, whose work you see further down the wall. Jordans was a great exporter of the visual language of Baroque Catholicism. His work was in Vermeer's own collection, we know from Vermeer's inventory. And yet, in one of the great ironies of history, Vermeer was a Catholic artist working in the Protestant Netherlands. Jordans himself seems to have been a secret Protestant working in the Spanish Netherlands. We know that because after his death, his body was smuggled across the border to the Dutch Republic to be given a Protestant burial. So you have these very complex identities playing out in everyday life, but also in art. You have artists painting for patrons whose religious beliefs they may not share, creating devotional images that would have been rejected by the state itself. And it's never left the Met since it came here in 1913. It really is one of the icons of the museum, and a very difficult thing for any of us to see come off the walls. But because we had this renovation project, we thought we would seize the opportunity to give it the conservation treatment that it really needed. In the mid-20th century, it had been treated with a synthetic varnish. Over time, that varnish had really grayed and come to interfere with the vibrancy of this picture, and particularly with Rembrandt, whose brushwork is so sculptural. It's heartbreaking to see any interference, anything preventing your access to that wonderful brushwork. You see things like the way that he has flipped his brush to use the butt end to incise these curls that spill out of his cap. And all of these wonderful details have become so much more present to us now, thanks to Dorothy's treatment of this work. There's really no escaping Rembrandt when you think about the Dutch 17th century, and that was true in his own lifetime. He was the figure you had to grapple with if you were an ambitious young artist at the time. In that sense, he's very different from Vermeer, who really was provincial and little known until the 19th century. Rembrandt was a figure of immense controversy. He enjoyed great success as a young man, but he ultimately would die in poverty. And that's really thanks to a shift in taste away from this somber coloration, this very sculptural application of paint, unsparing realism that he directed both at himself, at his own features, but also at those of his sitters. And as Rembrandt really persevered in the expression of his own signature style, Dutch taste shifted away over the course of the 17th century. As the Dutch became ever more prosperous, in a strange way, they almost lost cultural self-confidence. As they got richer, they wanted to be more like French people. And so they started to seek out artists who were in a much more international dialogue, who painted in a smooth, courtly fashion, interestingly, some of Rembrandt's own pupils who had really been very successful at emulating his style were even more successful in shifting over, changing camps, and painting in this elegant, smooth manner. If you look behind me, this is a self-portrait by Rembrandt's very first pupil, Gerrit Dou, who learned from his teacher the power of self-portraiture. They both made a lifelong project of self-portraiture, but Dou works in a completely different manner. He's a so-called feinschilder, a fine painter, someone who creates exquisitely jewel-like smooth surfaces where it's almost impossible to reconstruct how they were actually painted, whereas Rembrandt lays bare almost every brushstroke. Above all, we have this wonderful Vermeer depicting the young woman with the water pitcher. She's shown, before she's put on her public face, she's covered her dress with these linen wrappings so that she won't get it wet as she washes her hands and face. And I should point out, this was the very first Vermeer to ever enter an American collection, the first Vermeer to come to the Met as well, and we've been very lucky to add 4 more over time. And really the impetus for this collection was knowing how beloved these paintings are and wanting to make sure that they stayed on view during the years of our renovation upstairs. But I hope you'll see that that pragmatic desire to just keep beloved pictures on view has really evolved into the chance to tell a new story.